6.5%, was it? Is that what the current odds are of the Stanley Cup?
Well, and if you look at the round-by-round progression, the Stanley Cup favorite is the Vancouver Canucks.
Like, what a time to be alive!
Talking you through every goalie controversy, scoring slump, and draft lottery bust, this is the C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com. Here they are, the best starting lineup we could afford under the salary cap. Chris, Matt, Anna, and Adam.
Welcome to another episode of the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast, brought to you by the Full Press Coverage Network and CanucksHockeyBlog.com. I'm Chris at Lightforce, the voice, introducing each and every show that I happen to be on just because I love my own voice, joined virtually by Anna Forsyth, 8403. Welcome, Anna.
Hi, Chris. How's it going?
I thought I'd mix it up.
I liked it.
Compliment myself.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of a compliment. You just called yourself arrogant, but...
I know. I'm self-deprecating. It's like very Canadian of me.
Uh-huh.
Speaking of Canadian, if I, at some point in my life, can be serenaded by a bare-naked lady, I know I would too will have one.
Serenaded? Like...
Serenaded.
In a romantic sense.
Well, it doesn't have to be in a romantic sense.
I think that's what serenaded means.
Do you not know the references to which I'm using here?
Is it? Oh, it's the... I actually do know that. I watched that last night. Yeah, the Ryan Reynolds, whatever, Governor General Award. I don't know.
Yeah, so for the performing arts and the essentially a song was penned for him by Stephen Page, who's no longer a member of the Bare Naked Ladies, but once was.
Yeah, it threw me for a second, but then I was like, no, I knew I recognized his voice from somewhere.
Yeah, no, which is why I too feel at some point, if I could be serenaded by a bare naked lady.
It was a good video. I mean, the Sedins were in it.
And Steamer. Let's stand down here.
But yeah, you guys need to watch it. It's good fun.
Yeah. Speaking of what's good fun, if you happen to be watching the Vancouver Canucks, they got a win. That's fun. That's exciting. We're all excited. Going to the playoffs. The parade's back on. Yeah,
but there was a few doubts for a bit this week, but the parade is back on. We beat Montreal.
Just a few? Oh, okay. I'll take your word for it. It's just such a crazy time.
Hasn't it been such a crazy time for like the last 2 years?
8 years?
Well, 8 years, yeah, I guess, but like...
I was going to say, okay, 2 years, sure. It's been crazy time since, what was it that dude on Twitter said, since Brian Burke made some bad deals and it set the Canucks behind eons?
Oh, yeah.
So...
It's Burke's fault. I'm kind of okay with that.
And then from there, Wyatt caught wind of the tweet and had some fun, and that's essentially what's been going on. Everyone's been having fun. Blaming Bud Poyle and the Big Bang and other such things.
I mean, can we blame the Big Bang Theory? Because that's an awful show. So.
Oh, I love that show.
Great
theme
song. How
is it so awful?
Great theme song. Terrible show.
Sung by who?
Bare Naked Ladies.
Damn straight. I'm all about bare naked ladies. Let me tell you.
I knew that already.
So yes, the Vancouver Canucks got themselves a win, which is a rare event in this era of the team. We'll talk about the week that was, because they didn't get much else other than that. There's, I don't know, media wars going on, a player hated by the league and by apparently a broadcaster, and therefore former Canucks have to chime in on how horrible Canada and Vancouver and all sorts of other things happen to be. No changes in Vancouver as we are recording, and that doesn't mean there haven't been changes happening elsewhere. So you know what? We're going to get into all of that in this week's episode of C4. Okay, so let's just quickly run through the results of the week before we start to dive into further detail. The Vancouver Canucks kick things off in Pittsburgh, and as you and I had intimated, probably weren't going to come out with a win. They did not. Nope. The Vancouver Canucks lost 4-1 to a team that's now owned by the Fenway Sports Group. which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, maybe some of that Liverpool winning magic can rub off on them.
I know you go with Liverpool and not the Boston Red Sox.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's a bigger global brand. Might not mean as much in North America, but...
Okay, so I give pause there. I'd be curious. Liverpool is a large global brand, but when you think of baseball from the United States,
yeah,
there are
it's
a handful of
definitely- yeah.
brands, and the Bo Sox would be one of them. Bo Sox, Yankees,
Cubs.
I think Cubs is more.
They're like historically cursed and historically awful.
But for brands, like my nephew is a fan of the Bo Sox.
But I would say that the Yankees are like way above. Like,
oh yeah, I'm not talking stratospheric.
Like, I had no idea what that symbol meant growing up, but I knew it was everywhere. Like, it was on caps and shirts and whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah,
back to the Vancouver Canucks, which are not a global brand, playing a team called the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Give a quick final detail on the Liverpool thing? Just a quick shout out to friends of the show, Sound of Hockey, who just had like 2 minutes of awful podcasting talking about whether Liverpool was still in the Premier League, and just very much like it was just like the worst. I love them so much.
I don't think.
Oh my gosh,
I don't know. They can't
don't
be friends of the show anymore.
understand football whatsoever. Not even a tiny bit.
I'm. This is going to have to be discussed if we ever have any of the three on. Like, are you telling me of? Okay, there are three hosts.
Yeah.
Andy, Darren, and John, and none of them could understand where Liverpool was in the table.
No, Andy knew a tiny bit, and he had watched a couple minutes of the Arsenal-Liverpool game and saw the almost fight that occurred on the touchline, but between the two managers. But so he knew a lot more. But yeah, it was pretty bad.
Like they can actually watch Premier League football on network TV in the United States.
True.
We can't. Well, technically, we can if you have network TV.
There are ways.
Well, you know what I mean. And like in Canada, we can't. We got to work for it. So I'm a little disappointed. It would be one thing if they were like, "Is Brentford in the Premier League?"
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
Shout out to Brentford.
But I can understand if there's doubts.
Grew up 10 minutes from Brentford. Anyway.
This shows you how well the Canucks have done that we're spending, 5-10 minutes
I'm sorry,
talking about Liverpool and the Premier League. So yeah, the Vancouver Canucks got, as you put in the rundown, run over by the Pittsburgh Penguins. The result was, how do we put it?
I mean, it was funny, the whole joke about the fact that that was the worst penalty kill in the league, meeting the worst power play in the league. And of course, Pittsburgh scored.
Okay, scores on the power play within the first minute of the first period. If there is a goal that epitomizes the Vancouver Canucks struggles this season, it is that power play marker from Brian Rust. So yeah, the Vancouver Canucks, or not in the first period, sorry, in the second period. My bad. They survived the first. It's just been such a blur. But like the second period, the Canucks are done. They're deciding that, we got to go and look forward to our game in Carolina. Except Bo Horvat decides he wants to make a game of it by scoring late in the third, because that's what Bo's been doing this season.
That's what Bo does, yeah.
Right? His give a shiznit meter exists, and he seems to give some shiznits.
Yeah.
But no, the goal from Brock McGinn settled that game. So again, okay, we didn't expect the Vancouver Canucks to go and get themselves a result out of Pittsburgh, but there was the possibility that they would find themselves against Columbus in a way that would allow for them to put up a better effort and in turn make it interesting. And
I mean, sort of interesting. It It was a very frustrating game.
Well, so I would say this is the first game where you saw the Vancouver Canucks arguably play so well. Like, we've heard this story a couple times this season, but play so well, yet not find a way to get the result, right? Like, they got 41 shots on net over the course of the game, and we're not talking about like 20 of those shots in the third period. Third period was actually the fewest shots for them at 12. It's just that for one reason or another, defense seemed to be secondary to the actual, play of the game, and Vancouver Canucks just could not get pucks past Merzlikins, who also stood on his head.
Yeah, I mean, he pulled a Demko right there.
Yeah.
But
can you imagine getting Merzlikins?
I know, that's
Merzlikins.
Get
You've been Merzlikins.
Ooh. I don't know. Anyway, it was a very good performance. He's a good goalie. But it was super frustrating. Like, Canucks were by far the better team out in Columbus.
And who scored their very first goal of the season in that game?
Oh, Charlie Hustle himself, Tyler Mott.
And it's was it a Mott Girl Autumn?
Wait, he's trying to make it one. Oh, he almost had an empty netter tonight. It's going to be so sweet.
Oh, but okay. In Pittsburgh, Canucks didn't look all that good, but at least in Columbus, they look much better. So then they go and they play Boston in Game 17 of the Stanley Cup Final, or whatever it is, 2011, yeah. And, they had a chance.
Yeah. Honestly, it wasn't as lopsided a game as the Columbus game, but I don't think Boston were that great. I thought Canucks were pretty much in the game.
The Canucks. So this is the thing. The Vancouver Canucks, I felt, were controlling the game. Yes, they were only up 2-1 after the first period, but the Vancouver Canucks were finding ways to get, control of the puck, pucks on net, and I don't want to say manage the game, but like they did very well for 2 periods. The problem is that, as we already know, their penalty kill is non-existent. And they got themselves into some trouble in the third period, where they had proceeded to go and get themselves a couple penalties. You got Höglander, who got himself sent off for tripping, and an OEL who got himself, I
mean, I will say, like, the games against Boston are always going to be somewhat spicy. This was actually pretty tame for a Canucks Boston game, but it was still, had a bit of like toughness to it. That's fine if you get all the calls you want, or deserve, and B, if you have a decent enough penalty kill to deal with the fallout, which Canucks do not.
Well, okay. So OEL gets himself a boarding call. But this is the part I don't quite understand. There was a slew foot.
Yeah, leading up to it. Yeah. Which has now been disciplined by the league.
For 3 games.
3 games. But they didn't see it. The refs didn't see it.
I don't understand how that, you have 4 officials on the ice. I get that. Okay, I get in some rare circumstance the way things are going. You got 2 officials who somehow missed it. You got 2 others who could see it. And the way Marchand was playing, Marchand was finishing every possible check.
Yeah, I mean, he's also Brad Marchand.
Well, I know. The fact that he gets away with what he does blows my mind. And I know if there is a Bruins fan that somehow stumbles across our podcast by mistake, they'll be like, "You're just a bitter Canucks fan." That might be true.
Definitely
but it's
true.
Brad stinking Marchand.
I wonder if it's it's coming right the way around again, that refs don't want to give him reputational calls, so they're just giving him leniency. I mean, that's nonsense, but
now, in fairness, he was finishing every hit, and Cheech continued to sort of focus on it during the broadcast by talking about how some were very borderline, or I don't know. And Shorty was like, "Well, no, Cheech, I'm not so certain." And then he's like, "Nah, you just never call anything." I actually didn't see much wrong with what Marchand was doing, Slewfoot aside. I, in fact, would love if the Vancouver Canucks sort of had that player or that type of player that was going through and being potentially quote unquote borderline. It's just that when Marchand crosses that line, he's often, to your point, maybe he doesn't get the reputational call and gets away with it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm gonna be biased and think that whatever he's doing, he's being a nuisance. So, and I do wonder if Cheech was responding to the TV director or the TV director was responding to Cheech, because he was on, every single cutaway to the bench was Brad Marchand's
look at
face.
Marchand. I thought it looked like he got his elbow up. But after watching the replay, it looks like he got him square in the chest. And I don't recall Cheech ever saying he hated Marchand. I truly didn't. Like, the focus was on Brad. But former Vancouver Canuck legend, Anson Carter, he chimed in on social media and proceeded to go and point out that what Cheech did, which Anson was kind enough to refer to him as the Vancouver Canucks analyst,
I know.
saying that he hated a player, is the reason why fans or players don't like playing in Canada. And then, in a game of telephone, someone goes in, I don't know which reporter, goes and asks Marchand about this. And Marchand's response after the game is like, well, in Canada, the fans are really passionate because, everyone plays hockey and skates because their lakes are frozen all year long. And I'm like, okay, obviously not. But okay, keep going.
Not in Vancouver.
And I'm like, do our lakes freeze? They put signs up that, hey, that little layer of ice that makes the water shimmer, don't skate on that stuff.
Also,
but
lakes, we got a whole bunch of extra lakes as of 2 weeks ago, so you never know.
But Marchand goes on to say that, fans in Canada need to take a break because they make it hard on players. And, okay, I'll admit that there's probably many fans that are very critical and take things to the extremes. But I would like to also think that we as sort of Canadian hockey fans also do the exact opposite to those who we support and we fall behind. Like the Vancouver Canucks, when they're winning, I don't think there's a more passionate fan base. But then we're very much a, swinging, bell clock here. It's that pendulum goes the other direction when you're not.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. The Canadian markets are crazy. You're obviously taking that with the passionate side. And we all know that Leafs fans, Canucks fans can definitely take it too far. But he plays in Boston. Like, the sports fans are crazy there. Like,
no, not in Boston. They're not crazy in Boston. There's no one that wouldn't want to play in Boston or demand to be traded out of Boston.
Quite so. Yeah. I thought it was an odd thing to say, but it's also like you're being presented with this quote that's not a real quote at the end of a game when you've spent, 60 minutes being a pest.
Yeah, and got away with something that just got you a 3-game vacation.
But yeah, to clarify, I think we kind of said it, but Cheech said that he did not say hate. He said that he did not like the Slewfoot and talked about how Marchand plays bigger than he is, but he was the best player on the ice. So,
yeah,
I think
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, Cheech handled it pretty well.
That's because it's Cheech.
Yeah, he's all class.
Yeah, I mean, we're biased, but it's Cheech.
Yeah.
Anson, however, was kind enough to go in and take secondary shots about the Vancouver sports fans and what have you. Saying that, you obviously didn't read the Sedin's goodbye letter in, what is that? Players Tribune. And what's interesting is that Anson Carter himself, so there was actually the person that Anson replied to had said, but you were the guy that went out and said that you made the Sedins better in the one season. And I think Anson misinterpreted that because, one, he said that. This conversation had come up before the Sedins had retired. And while maybe maybe just like any accompanying piece that made the Sedins quote unquote better. And I'm not suggesting that Anson didn't provide something to them that helped them with their own game and help grow them. It's interesting that every player that had been paired with the Sedins had some stellar seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Trevor Linden had one of his best seasons in his twilight of his career when he happened to get put on the power play with the Sedins, right? Like, it's because they made whomever the third Sedin was that much better. Anywho,
super quick off the rails on that. You know how like the phrase would be like Sedins in a pylon, right?
Mm-hmm. The pylon would put up some serious points, double digit probably.
Yeah, like I had this conversation on Twitter the other day, but yeah, in case you missed it, it was probably like a couple of years into being a Canucks fan before I realized that they did not mean the like giant electrical towers. That they meant the small cones.
The electrical pylons, yeah.
Yeah, see, that's what a pylon is in the UK.
Traffic cones, yeah.
Traffic cone would just be a cone. But yeah, to prove my point,
they could make one of those pylons as well, probably put up double digit.
But that's the thing. It kind of made sense to me because they don't move.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Neither do some of the pylons that you've seen historically in the NHL. So the Vancouver Canucks are on the road. They're 0-3. And like, it's a dark place in Canucks social media. People are like all sides of the spectrum right now are just at wit's end. I'm not going to suggest every fan is upset because I know there are some who would cringe at even being associated with being upset with this team, but there aren't really too many happy people, which is what sort of leads to an interlude. This actually happened, I believe it was on Friday, but friend of the show, Murph and Ian McIntyre happened to be broadcasting from a studio in Toronto. And I will admit, I find this kind of weird. Like, why would you not be traveling with the team?
Yeah.
Like, I don't recall. Like, I actually don't know if they were in Toronto for the Pittsburgh game.
Yeah, I think they were.
Okay. So, and I don't know the reasons behind it. Maybe it's just like the border travel idiosyncrasies of going to the United States. Like, who knows? Like, I mean, there could be very valid reasons. It's just really weird that you would have IMAC and Murph go to Toronto in a studio when both are from here. Like, if you're going to put them in a studio, why not put them in a studio?
That was a thing for me for sure. Because obviously they've done a lot of broadcasts from like the hallway and they're like, shoved against some equipment or like in the middle of some players warming up. Like, and that doesn't matter. I think it adds to it, if anything.
Yeah.
Like maybe it was a border thing, but yeah. Strange.
But Matt Sakaris chimes in and takes a poke, and Ian McIntyre in turn. In fairness to Ian replied, I felt, as best as he could in a public way by saying, hey, I don't believe, this is you. You got my number. Let's talk. Let's have a conversation. I don't know if the phone call happened, but since that time, things have gotten a little heated between Sakaris and McIntyre. I think it's just sort of, we're starting to see sort of like even Vancouver sports media almost get to this like, feuding stage that we in the podcast world, we've had blood feuds forever. Like, trust the process. Wyatt and Jordan, they know what they did, and damn straight that feud will continue to fester. But it's just a weird time when you have a team so dysfunctional that anyone who is associated with covering the team and or watching and engaging with the team is agitated.
Yeah, I feel like it's just bad energy all around, like negative vibes for sure.
You've got Team JT, Team Bo, which apparently are not teams. They're like one and the same, thick as thieves.
Yeah,
You got
I'm trying to remember who suggested this, but someone's saying that the Canucks should lean into it and just like make a social media series that's like Team
totally.
Bo versus Team
I
JT.
mean, so Ryan Nicholas, I don't know if he was the one who should be credited, but I just remember him talking about it on Twitter, like, team like that, when the Vancouver Canucks beat the LA Kings early, it was 2 seasons ago.
2 seasons ago.
I think it was team like that.
Yeah. I was wearing my Team Like That shirt yesterday.
And the Canucks own that. I think that was very smart, sort of, almost guerrilla marketing in some respect. Yeah, they totally should capitalize on the Bo JT thing if it's not real. You also have Drancer in the rink watching practice where some new drill's happening, and JT goes and shouts out, "We don't know what we're doing." And when asked about that, JT feels the quote was unfair because they were having a fun new drill. And it was so new that people didn't really know what they were doing yet.
Yeah, I mean,
that might be true, but
yeah, it doesn't look good. But it's funny. I did feel like people were overreacting to that too, and I was like,
oh, I'm sure they were.
It's just emblematic of a bad regime. If that was the only bad thing that had happened, like you'd be like, okay, like
yeah. But the thing it's one of many. But the part that really gave me intrigue: when does an NHL player describe a drill during practice as fun?
That's true. Maybe when he's trying really hard to sell it.
Yeah, right. Like it's an interesting adjective to which you're going to use to describe, said activity. But I am not a player, and I've never been in the locker room. Maybe the players all sit around. Hey, man, did you see that new drill today? That was a lot of fun. Oh, gee whiz, it was.
I mean, I tweeted this if not related to that, but like it does apply that, a few years ago, Canucks were going through a hard stretch and their bust, the arena broke. And God, there were so many time metaphors about it. And I just sort of said, sometimes a broken bus is just such a broken bus. That's all it is. It's just a broken bus. And sometimes a player getting confused in a drill is just that. But when everything else is going wrong and you're not doing anything to stop it, how else can you read it?
So everything's been going wrong. You've got drills that are fun and new and no one knows what they're doing. You got Team JT, Team Bo. You've got like many reports that Jim Benning has been trying to pull the trigger on Travis Green, but being told no. So they roll themselves into Montreal, who we will talk about in Half Full, Half Empty, have made some adjustments of their own.
Mm-hmm.
And squeak out a 2-1 win.
They did it. It's over.
Like, is that because Montreal wasn't that good, or is that because Demko decided to Demko the heck out of the Habs?
I would say it's mainly because Montreal aren't that good, but the fact that they came close to tying it that late on, even when they aren't that good.
Well, Demko was like in the third period and late in the second, Demko was Demkoing.
Mm. Yeah.
Right? I mean, it was Montreal was trying to tie that game up. And I think we have seen this happen, the same story before. Even when Demko is trying to Demko the heck out of a team, he is not a miracle worker, just as close as we'll probably see here in Vancouver. So I am glad the Vancouver Canucks got a win. Have they righted this ship? Have they figured out what's wrong? Are these 2 points all that they needed so that when they go into Ottawa later this week, they too will beat another team that they should, well, on paper, beaten, and then find themselves come home to a homestand where everyone rallies and is happy and we're going to go on a run? Or is this just a mirage?
I mean, we'll see. I do think, like, over the last 3 games, Canucks have looked a little better than before. But I do think it's not going to last either way. Like, the fundamental issues still exist.
Well, without question. There be issues. They need more fun and new exciting drills to which to practice their craft. Speaking of fun new drills to practice their craft, my game changer.
Oh, yeah?
Practices should be open.
All practices should be open.
That's right.
So that we don't get these secondhand reports from Johns. We can figure it out for ourselves. Just how fun that drill was.
I will give pause to this. I understand that maybe some practices need to be quote unquote closed, but I think practices should be open for the most part. A vast majority of them.
Yeah, I feel like all out, like all rinks that aren't Rogers. I feel like those practices should be open for sure. But I don't know.
I know there's a logistical cost here that then starts to come into play. Like, I mean, what I'm saying is not as easy to execute on because it could cost teams money to then have to staff it in a way and as well secure it in a manner that allows people access. I think you can monetize that to some extent. Like, I'm not suggesting, who knows? Maybe the Vancouver Canucks or another NHL team would go in and try to put a full price ticket there. But the thing about it is I think there's just a way to provide access to fans who then can in turn, firsthand see what's going on, hear what's being shouted out. I also believe that it almost puts onus on the players to some respect, maybe too much pressure. Maybe this is the Canadian fan that's in me that is so brutal to play in front of. But
there is part of me that thinks, not that it's really against the idea, but that thinks the novelty would wear off quickly.
Oh, yeah, no, you wouldn't see a full barn. Like, it would happen a handful of times, and then suddenly it's just a scraggle of people. But I have gone to a few practices over the years.
Same.
I've had the opportunity to go and see them. And I think it's pretty cool. It's kind of neat just watching things happen, drills. I get to sort of see stuff that you wouldn't otherwise get to see in just a game. Because one of the reasons why is that the game gets in the way of that. Well, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, there's more going on. And obviously the opponent is doing their own thing, which then impedes your ability to see what your team may or may not try to be doing. I just said try to be doing that. It makes no sense. But you know what I mean.
I glossed over it. Yeah, I guess I think more practices should be open than currently, but I'm not in a rush to go. Like, it's all right. It's cool to have experienced it, but it's not like something that I would go to regularly, I don't think. But I'm glad, like, media are there. I mean, in football, no one goes. Like, the club puts out its own statement from practice. Very occasionally, media get to go, but yeah, it's much more closed off. So I'm glad there's that element to it. But I guess what I'm saying is I support your proposal. I just don't know if I'm not going to be, like, passionately. I'm not joining you on your soapbox.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're the one who tried to kill off mascots and then found yourself in a predicament.
Well,
last show. Well, maybe not last show. Last week, since last show.
I stand by it.
Yeah, you now have to hate your hometown mascot.
I would say, I think I figured out that I don't like the cannon mascot. Because although Arsenal do have a cannon on their badge, they don't have an actual cannon. Their mascot is a dinosaur. So
makes sense, I'm sure.
Gunnosaurus. I don't know where that came from, but he's a dinosaur.
Off the rails here. Is the mascot older than Sky Sports in the Premier League?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, because I have learned a lot about Sky Sports and the Premier League in the early days and television and how they were trying to bring, like Rupert Murdoch was bringing all sorts of like US game entertainment into the picture.
Watching that thing? No, I think mascots are pretty British. Like, there's a...
Well, I'm not saying it wasn't. It's just like
this
dinosaur, like it's the type of mascot coming into.
Right. No, I think he's always been Gunnosaurus. There was a whole drama in the pandemic when he got fired. It was very sad.
Well, we'd be sad too if Finn were out of a job, or at least I know I would.
I would be. Poor Finn.
No. We're going to take ourselves a short break to, get over the fact that we just talked about Finn losing his job as a Vancouver Canucks mascot. You're listening to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com and the Full Press Coverage Network.
Take hitting out of the game. You can't hit anymore, so don't do it.
The unsportsmanlike conduct, I want to get an explanation on.
No kidding.
Because how do you get suspended for unsportsmanlike conduct?
Plus interference. There's no interference there. He had the puck.
Now, Madison never ever did that before. Now, why did he do it? And that because he was mad.
Well, your early favorite for the Calder Trophy, that's for sure. Elias Pettersson, you might even say your early favorite for the Hart Trophy.
Just to get back to your question, Elias is going to play plenty. He's going to get a lot of power play time. And yeah, I'm concerned about our offense. We lost 200-point players, and we've got to find a way to score.
Prior to finding themselves playing the Montreal Canadiens, the Vancouver Canucks got to sit down and hear a press conference from the owner and chairperson of the team, Jeff Molson. And the reason why he was talking to media earlier today, we're recording here on Monday, is that the Canadiens cleaned house. Now, this is a weird situation, and maybe it's because I haven't really paid too close attention to it. On Saturday, their assistant, I think it was Saturday, maybe it would have been Friday, their assistant general manager, Scott Mellenby, he quit, which is kind of weird. Yeah. Like, the AGM quits, and then suddenly there's scuttlebutt that the next general manager in Montreal will have to speak French. And I'm like, did I miss something here? Like, Mellenby quit. Like, are you talking about the AGM? No, they're talking about Bergevin, the GM. I'm like, okay, this is weird. He's still employed. Is this kind of like what Travis Green is having to live through? And apparently it was, because on the following day, on Sunday, Jeff Molson relieved the entire front office. The general manager side of the operation of their duties, and brought in Jeff Gorton as vice president of hockey operations.
Right. So he doesn't get too big for his boots.
Well, I think so. I think he's vice president because I want to say Jeff Molson is president, which for Vancouver Canucks fans who suggest that Francesco Aquilini is very involved with the team.
Yeah.
Jeff Molson's the owner, and like, if he's the guy that, like, that, it's weird here in Montreal that it's okay or it's not. Maybe that's part of the problem. I don't know. But can you explain to me this? And I'm slightly confused here. Did Montreal make it to a Stanley Cup Final last season?
That was them.
Oh, this is now. Oh, you can make changes like that when things don't go the right way or the way that you'd expect. That's permissible?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm just having a moment where I'm realizing that Jeff Molson and Scott Mellenby look almost exactly the same. Google it. I'm right.
I can't say I've looked at the two pictures, but I will take your word for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because obviously Montreal did get to a Stanley Cup Final. They were also basically boosted into the Stanley Cup Final because of how the league was set up.
No.
I'm playing against...
The North Division was the strongest, in division. The NHL.
Yeah, playing against teams like Vancouver.
Oh, the Vancouver, it's just the North Division did Vancouver a disservice because Vancouver was a good team, but the North was strong.
And COVID, obviously. So we've had that's a
that too.
Real excuse. But
yeah,
obviously it seems a bit soon considering that, but I think last year's run masked deeper problems. Does this sound familiar yet?
No, I can't put my finger quite on this issue here. How many? Actually, I'm curious. How many seasons did Bergevin have at the helm of the Canadiens?
I don't know.
I should have looked this up beforehand.
Yeah. I will figure it out. He's a weird-looking dude.
He used to play for the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, he played for like 10 teams, though, didn't he?
Well, yeah, he got traded here late in the season. I want to say, was it like the Eric Weinrich deal? Mm-hmm. It was like all these crazy trades that took place late in the season to try to rescue it. But that did not occur. I mean, I could be blending things together here, but
I was looking up the general
Bergevin
manager thing. So
no, totally. I mean, don't look at the trade. Bergevin was described at that time as a crazy character who was a practical joker.
Sure.
Anyhow.
Yeah, so 2012. So he was the off season of 2012. So
okay, so
13,
he had him
his first year.
So okay, well that tells us that Jim Benning still has time. Right? That's the same thing. Same but different, but still the same.
Just same but different. Yeah. I'm just not really here for the lionizing of Marc Bergevin. I will say that. It's been
What are you
pretty
talking about?
nauseating.
He did nothing wrong. He built a winner. He drafted really good players.
Including a sex criminal.
That shouldn't have any bearing on the quality of the hockey player. Hey, did you hear Evander Kane's available?
I did hear that.
Sorry, and anyone think I'm taking me seriously here? If the Vancouver Canucks were to acquire Evander Kane, this would no longer be the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast. It might be Chris and Anna get to hang out and talk about things, maybe hockey, but I wouldn't have. I don't see it happening. But yeah, I got no time for that kind of crap. Hell, if the Canucks had drafted Logan Mailloux is what his name, right?
I mean, they would have to be equally pissed off. But yeah.
Well, true. I mean,
they did not. But yeah, if they had drafted him in the second round, I would have been very annoyed. I mean,
and I should also point out that Jeff Molson greenlit that. I mean, whether or not he liked it or not, he actually socialized it with his, we're going to make him a better hockey player or a better person or whatever.
No actual plans on how to do that.
No, you don't need plans. Things just sort themselves out.
Let's not forget Marc Bergevin's part in the whole Chicago mess. So,
no, was he?
Yeah.
It's just, you know what? There is actually a small part of me that wonders if Jeff Molson is not necessarily using the poor season as an excuse to reset, but coming to the realization that you have a bad season and you're also going to have all these other sort of quote unquote fires that you have to deal with as an owner. And let's sort of move that news cycle on by getting everyone talking about the new people that are going to take charge.
Yeah, sure. I mean, daylight and $1 short to figure that out, but
hey, if there's something that we've seen in hockey, it's whatever we can do to change the news cycle and the conversation.
Yeah.
So it would be no different here. But no, so Montreal cleans house. They're on the hunt for new people. Jeff Gorton being, I guess, the guy who's doing it as vice president of hockey operations. But if you as an owner can go and clean house, can you explain to me that why Vancouver hasn't done something similar? Is there a way to right this ship? Like, we've talked about Jim Benning, we've talked about Travis Green, so it's just a tough spot. Like, all the scuttlebutt going on about Travis Green potentially being out of a job, and then those phone calls taking place, then deals being vetoed. It's not podcasters. We're talking about like mainstream media who are like Elliot Friedman is feeling for Canucks fans. That tells you
tragic,
something.
Isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, honestly, we've talked about this before. Does firing Travis Green do something? Probably, but it's not necessarily his fault. But we're at a stage now where the Canucks need a radical shake-up. You know, it's like pulling the goalie when they get scored on 4 times. Just get him out of there. Yeah. Obviously, I've heard a lot of people say, like, no point firing the GM now, keep him around to the off-season. Like, you can't do anything till then. But then, what do you have? You have, like, a lame duck GM who can't make any deals because the ownership says, no, don't do that. No, don't do that. But they're trying to desperately make a deal to save their job and turn around the season. So, I don't know if that's any better.
See, the thing about Vancouver is reports indicate they thought they were a really good team this season. And they thought the analytics got it wrong. They thought the pundits weren't giving them their due. And I will admit, the early sort of start to the season that they had, where that road trip, they acquitted themselves well. Oh, this is a Vancouver Canucks team that's finally figured things out. Oh my goodness, we've won the trade for this season. And as we have said all along, the contracts, the cap, the lack of sort of depth in the blue line and what have you, those are the next GM's problems. But we're winning the cup this season. How many points do you think the Canucks will need to get into the playoffs? If you were to go and suggest a number here, how many do you think that would be? I'll say like 90,
Yeah.
96, 94, 92.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at 90 as the bare minimum.
Okay,
and
so let's say
I would just say
90 points.
Yeah, what kind of hockey do they need to play to get there?
So they have to win 63% of their games
it's
moving
like
forward.
600 hockey, right? At least.
Right. I mean, it's not 600 hockey isn't impossible.
They're sitting at the bottom of the Pacific.
But like to correlate here, the Vancouver Canucks have to, out of every 3 games, need to win 2.
Yeah.
Do you see that happening?
No. Also, yeah, they're playing 500. They're playing under 500 hockey right now.
Well, no, they won against Montreal, right? The 3 games this week, they need to win in Ottawa. That's 2 out of 3. I'm looking at the ahead at the schedule here. So the Vancouver Canucks, okay, they lost against Boston, but they won against Montreal, and they'll then beat Ottawa. Now, if they were to then come home and lose to Pittsburgh, they'll then need to beat LA and Boston. They'll lose to Winnipeg. They need to beat Carolina. And this is 2 points. They can't, every time they get a point, that's not good enough.
Yeah.
If they get a point, that means they now have to get a point in one of those 3-game stretches to make up for it. The Vancouver Canucks are at the quarter mark of the season, and they currently have themselves a 3, below 400 hockey. They're at 350, I think, on the season.
Hmm.
And they essentially have to double their production.
Yeah.
It's not impossible. We have seen teams go on some crazy runs, but it starts tomorrow.
St. Louis did it, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Go Blues.
But so this is the thing. If you think it's going to have to start tomorrow, do you fire your coach to make that happen?
Yeah.
Right. I think
if they fire him, they fire him when they get home.
Right. It would have to happen now. You don't wait. You do it now because you got to light a fire, because you can't, once your team starts winning, you don't necessarily fire a coach then, because that just introduces uncertainty. Right now, you've sort of got quote unquote nothing to lose. But if you fire your coach, I can't see a world where the Vancouver Canucks or the ownership group says, "Hey, Jim, go pay someone." I genuinely don't believe you're going to get a decent coach who's going to come on and just finish the season.
That's the conundrum. That's the predicament they're in, right? They want to fire Jim Benning, but what kind of GM's going to want to come in with a new coach already installed?
No, very few will. And I want to point out, I don't see Travis Green as the problem. I'll admit that maybe there's the possibility the room isn't necessarily buying into the message that he's selling, but he's been asked to go and work magic for many seasons now with a lineup that hasn't been all that magical.
Yeah.
That's not on Travis. Yeah, we might hate his deployment. We might not like his ability to develop necessarily certain types of players, what have you. But the guy upstairs who's been making the decisions, has been the problem.
I mean, can I just say, it's funny that you kind of see him doing the Jim Benning desperation thing to save his job, that in the Canucks can't take faceoffs anymore, so Bo Horvat is taking all of them. Pretty much.
Got it.
They put him
do what you gotta do.
on a defensive zone face-off and take him off again.
As John Tortorella once told us, you got to ride those horses until they drop.
Yeah, because players are horses, apparently, which is a nice analogy. But also very tools.
Yes. But then you have was it against Boston? I think it was. Petey got himself less than 10 minutes in the game. Now he might have been hurt or what have you, but
Yeah.
there are decisions that don't make a whole lot of sense on the coaching side. And then there are some where it's like, I got a coach to save my job here.
Yeah, they're changing
just
up
a
that
weird situation.
power play so much just to try and get some sort of vibe going.
And actually, we haven't really talked about this, but there's also reports that on the ownership side, we always talk about Francesco Aquilini as being the guy. He is, but it's a family operation. And word has it that his brother, Roberto, who isn't as invested in the hockey operations, I think he's actually listed as an alternate governor on the staff or what have you, and he's very involved in Canucks Autism Network. Well, apparently he's not too keen on how the Aquilini family name and brand is being sullied, because it is a very impeccable brand in its own right.
Can we just talk about the fact that they, got accused of not giving their migrant workers water, withholding water? Also,
there was a Reddit post that...
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, there was a Reddit post that actually started documenting all the Aquilini sort of family operation, violations and
drama.
Things that...
I mean, they have a horrible reputation in property. And property is
tax dodging,
already gross.
Renovictions.
It's apparently a horrible place to work.
Employment standards issues.
But this is the
you
straw
have two
that
brothers apparently duking it out.
Broke the camel's back, apparently.
Yeah, it is so surreal.
Yeah, imagine if that's the final straw, is that Roberto was embarrassed of Francesco.
Well, okay. Ultimately, though, from what I understand, it's Luigi who has final say,
right.
The patriarch of the organization. I mean, he's not there. Francesco is the face of the team. But if Luigi goes and decides there's a change, it changes. And I'm wondering if maybe we're closer to that than we think. So I talked about this in C4 Discord. I had said if the Vancouver Canucks are going to make changes, it's going to be this Friday in the afternoon for a couple of reasons. One, they wait until they get home. Two, the Vancouver Canucks will play on the Saturday at home. And if they're going to make changes, they'll probably want it to sort of be in place. And two, the Canucks look at Friday afternoon as the place where the bad news lives.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Right. I mean, in the news cycle of old, that's where all the bad news goes, because you miss the news cycle until the following Monday, because the world apparently stops Friday afternoon. It doesn't in the current day and era that we live in, but who would tell the antiquated operation it is Vancouver Canucks PR? And that's where it'll happen. Now, if it doesn't happen there, I genuinely don't think it happens till the new year. I think they go through a rough December. And let's be honest, we'll have a good indication of whether or not this team's making the playoffs or not by the end of December.
Do you think if they win in Ottawa, they'll find it too weird to
no
fire them, or you don't think so?
No, I don't think 2 wins. I don't think winning against the Habs and the Sens would be enough at this point to say the ship has been steady.
Yeah, I mean,
because as you and I have just pointed out, their record is as such, they need to win 2 games out of every 3.
Yeah.
And that's ensuring that when they are playing divisional rivals, that they're taking both points. Yeah. They can't commit those loser points there. So I mean, and we're working with 90.
Yeah, exactly.
90 might not be enough, right? It's too hard to tell, but I would think we're probably in the mid to high 90s, which 2 out of 3 would get them there. But this is the wiggle room they have been provided with. Not that much.
Yeah.
So, do you think everything happens Friday afternoon? Do you think it happens when they return? Whether or not they win against the Sens?
If I had to pick, I think I'd say New Year as well.
Yeah, and the only reason I would think it was going to happen this week, Friday, you just came home from the road trip. That's it. You went on the road. Things have not gone well. You can't come home with 4 points out of 5 games and say that was a good road trip. Not where the Vancouver Canucks are right now.
No.
Injuries aren't it. Even if PD's playing hurt, injuries are not it. He's well enough to play.
Yeah.
So, what a world we live in right now.
I mean,
can we still claim to be the C4 Canucks playoffs podcast at this point? I'm beginning to have doubt.
Nope. Full steam ahead.
Okay. Parade goes down Georgia.
I will say, looking at that New Year time period, Canucks play 5 straight games against Pacific Division rivals to close out the year. San Jose, Anaheim, Seattle, Anaheim, LA. So, yeah. Should be interesting.
And open it up in against Seattle on the first. So really, that's 6 games in total.
Yeah.
So it's I'm struggling here, and I'm trying to be positive. I think they can do it.
Maybe
anything's possible.
Maybe that's
got to be in it to win it.
Just what we need, though. Like new coach, new energy, make the playoffs.
If the Canucks win a cup, I don't care how they do it. But I'll be very honest, it scares me that if the Vancouver Canucks were to have a new coach and suddenly turn things around, that allows for Jim Benning to continue to be the guy in charge. It's been very clear. I've never been a Jim Benning guy from day one.
Let's be real. I'm not really advocating for Travis Green to lose his job. I think he might anyway.
Oh, no, I know you're not.
But, yeah, I don't know. I think you're pretty safe because I don't think Canucks can turn it around enough to justify Jim Benning staying in a job. But,
yeah.
Never know.
Anywho, curious what you, our listeners, think.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I know many of you in C4 Discord are of the opinion that Jim has done. The few that might have been supportive of Jim have. Actually, I don't know if we've ever really had anyone who's been supportive of Jim.
In our listenership, I don't know. Maybe back in the day.
Yeah.
We thought he had some fresh ideas. I thought Torts might have some good ideas. So.
Hey, I wonder if Mike Gillis is available. Speaking of fresh ideas.
I don't think he's coming back.
No, but just saying, I was actually going over the Penn's presentation that Spencer happened to mistakenly share.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some stuff in there I would like to see the Vancouver Canucks put into play. Spencer Gillis, actually, a little off the rails, but sort of on point. He wrote an article. I don't know if it was Post Media, like in all the papers, but I saw it through the Vancouver Sun, talking about the replacement for general manager in Montreal. And he listed some very sort of outside of what we would normally say as hockey establishment names, including many women who I was reading, like just the short sort of blurbs. And I'm like, man, I want her to be in the Vancouver Canucks operation. Like 1, new blood, 2, new approaches, 3. I want the Canucks to be the team that starts to set the standard the right way. That would buy me as a fan.
Yeah, I mean, that would certainly pique my interest. What a way to win the fans back, but there's all kinds of hockey men that...
Yeah, it's not going to happen. But I just... but looking through, first of all, it was a good article if you want to give it a read. Essentially what Spencer says is it doesn't have to be the same old retreads. People were getting all upset that why would it need to be a French-speaking general manager that, disqualifies so many? And he's like, no, it doesn't. You open it up actually just to anyone who speaks French.
Yeah, just learn French.
Quite a few people, in fact, are it's the problem is and I don't think it was Spencer that actually said this. It might have been someone else. It's not the French language that is the limiting factor. It's actually the gender. If you add the ability to bring in a female executive, there are many out there.
Yeah.
Now, I'll admit, not all teams are in the position where they could have someone new come in the environment. Because I wouldn't like the one thing I would not want is, let's say, whether it be the first female GM in the NHL to come into a situation that she's not. I don't want her to be set up to fail.
Yeah.
I want not to suggest I want her to be set up to succeed. I want her to be put into a position to show that, her gender is not the problem.
Yeah. That's called the glass shelf or the glass cliff, that phenomenon where women are inserted into problematic companies or whatever. So they're basically set up to fail.
Yeah.
And Canucks would definitely fall under that.
No, and I know, but you know what I mean, right? Like, I wish this could be here. I know the reasons as to what are limiting that, and I don't. There are far too many people out there, and I mean, we've talked about this actually on other shows. You and Marissa had actually recently chatted about it, where it's like, oh, you're a woman, so therefore, your opinion doesn't matter. You never played the game, so how would you ever know? You've never been in a locker room. None of that matters. Like, if you're a good leader, lead.
Yeah. And I would say, I know you were trying to be even-handed when you say you didn't necessarily want them to be put in a position to succeed. I think that's exactly what you want.
Well, no, okay, but you know what I mean. I'm just
but especially if it's for the
I don't want people to say, because it's like, look at and I'm using the Jim Benning, Mike Gillis thing here. How many people defend Jim Benning by saying Gillis left the cupboards bare?
Right.
Guaranteed those same people would say so-and-so benefited from.
Yeah. But then if you're obviously the NHL will have their rules and whatever, but if you're the Canucks front office, you want to put your new executive in the best position possible.
Let's be honest.
Given the mess.
Male or female, there are going to be people that say, oh, that person benefited from all the hard work that Jim put in.
Caleb will definitely be suggesting that.
Yeah. Anywho, here we are at the end of another show. One of which the Vancouver Canucks have had a rough week. There could be changes afoot by the time we record our next episode. As we get into December, for those of you who tune into Instead of the Anthems, our patron-only pre-show, there won't be one next week. We actually mentioned it on this week's IOTA, but next week there won't be an IOTA. There will be IOTAs sort of as we get into December. There may be another voice or two or three joined me over the course of the month. Mm-hmm. Things are afoot. Anna's leaving me.
I'm leaving temporarily.
She's finally had it with me. I've chased away another host, Clay Who.
I've literally
Matt.
Thousands.
I don't know if it was me or Matt that chased away Adam. But
Adam is chained up in Matt's basement. We all know this.
Still, does Matt have a basement?
I don't know.
Or is it the Dad Lee's basement?
There you go.
Adam's stuck in.
Bo Horvat's empty house.
But no, I mean, as we get into sort of the month of December, shows will be coming fast and furious, except for December 27th. Mark your calendars. We are not recording December 27th, which means on December 28th, there is no show.
No show
that's sort of our
holidays.
Our holiday break. And, on that note, you'll probably find that we may start taking sort of the holiday Mondays off again. We haven't sort of in the past while because it's been such a crazy schedule.
Yeah.
The way the seasons have been, they're fast and furious, but I think it's important that we get back into sort of our own sort of swing of things and take those mental breaks. I mean, we're Canucks fans. We need a rest from the Canucks from time to time.
Yeah.
But if you want to stay attuned as to what's going on with our show, C4 Discord's the place to go. Discord and also C4 Podcast. Obviously, you can follow us online on Twitter at the C4 Podcast and on Facebook, facebook.com/C4 Podcast. Got thoughts on the show, thoughts about anything that we said, just thoughts in general. Send us a text message or leave us a voicemail at 604-200-6201. That's 604-200-6201. But Anna, what final words of wisdom do you have for everyone this week?
I mean, we won a game. Rebuild over. Right?
We've been rebuilt.
Yeah.
It's that meme that when Vancouver experiences a weather event, the lawn chair tipped over and it's "we will rebuild," which quite frankly is no longer appropriate. But you know the one I'm talking about? Yeah. The Vancouver Canucks are the lawn chair and it has been put back up. Final words of wisdom for me. I just want to give another shout out here to the Canucks at supporting the charities that are helping essentially provide support for the victims of the flooding and the weather events we're continuing to experience here in BC. It's just so surreal, but I just want everyone to stay safe.
Yeah.
I am myself lucky where I live. It isn't so much an issue. I think you're in a pretty
I'm pretty safe.
Pretty safe. My sister, who is a little elevated, she actually had her entire first floor flooded.
Yikes.
Last week.
Oh, God.
So, that's significant issues. But again, even that is not as bad as what some are experiencing in the Sumas Prairie and the region and the Fraser Valley into Merritt and to Princeton, in the interior, British Columbia. If you don't happen to live here, but everything you hear is that, we get a lot of rain in BC. We do. We're very much used to the rain we get. So when you hear people in the province of BC complaining about the amount of rain that we are getting and suggesting that we have never seen this much in our lives, you need to take an honest look at that.
Yeah.
And understand that is a real issue. So food for thought. Speaking of real issues, the Vancouver Canucks front office, which we'll talk about again next week. So on behalf of Anna, 4603, myself, Chris, at Life Force, this is the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast on Full Press Coverage Network and CanucksHockeyBlog.com. And by the way, we out.